Okay, guys, welcome to Beach Theory. Today we have a very interesting podcast for you guys, but I just want to pause for a second and say, bless you. That's what I wanted to say.
You wanted to pause for a second so that I could burp.
And you did a great burp.
That was a good one.
Now, don't tune away, you guys. I feel like the last several podcasts have been real downers.
And this one is going to be another one that's a downer. But I promise our life turns up. I
feel like we need to be
right
more positive.
It's not that. It's that we are explaining how our life was. It has not been like, oh, we're focusing on the negative of our life. That's not what we're doing. We're just documenting through this podcast what happened to us.
And it was a hard time of life.
Yeah.
But I think looking back, we look at it and it almost seems darker looking back. But in the moment, I don't think it was all bad. We had good times too, didn't we?
That's your opinion. No, I'm just kidding. Well, when we were on the property in Oregon, which we talked about in our last podcast, if you didn't hear it already.
Having a baby in the woods.
not
birthing a baby, but caring for a child.
Caring for a child in the woods for 2 months or a month or so. But it was no running water, no electricity, living in a tent.
So if you missed it, go listen to last week's podcast.
So we're kind of picking up where we left off there. And now we're going to be talking about what happened after that. And it didn't get easier. That's all I can say. At least it didn't get easier
for a long time.
For 2 years.
But I'm thinking about it. I'm okay, if we even talked about what happened last year, where there was a lot of trials last year. Is there any good memories? Is there any good stories that we can tell that are
last
year?
What even
exciting?
happened last year? It's a blur.
We'll get to that eventually, but I just want to make sure that we're not life was so bad and we were poor.
No, I don't look at it like that. I really don't. But at the beginning, it really was that hard.
Right.
There's no way that I could talk about life experiences at that time and say, it was all great. I learned a lot. That's not realistic.
Let's just try to think of at least one good fun time from that trip that we can, enjoy talking about.
Here's Michael looking at the positive side of things. And I think that's great. But I also don't want to sugarcoat it because I can sugarcoat things.
I know.
Really well.
I'm even better at it.
It's always a competition. Just kidding. No, but I also don't want to ignore the facts that the real life experiences that we've had and say, oh, it wasn't as bad as we actually thought. It's only feeling I really truly believe the only reason why we're able to look at it and think a little bit positively is because we're not in it anymore.
That's true. But also I think that in the moment, I always look at things from the positive perspective. So even if looking back, we're oh my gosh, that was a really hard thing, living through it in the moment, I probably had a good attitude because I'm just a positive person.
I think there's just been different phases, Mm-hmm. There were times where it was very hard for you. And there were times where it was easier for you to look at it positively, even if we were going through something hard. Same with me.
Yeah. I think there were times where it was hard, but the majority of the time it was good. I didn't feel sad and depressed and miserable.
Which time are you talking about?
Life in general.
Yeah. I'm not a sad, depressed person.
I'm
a very optimistic person.
Even what we're about to talk to today about moving to Florida and the struggles that came with that. I think ultimately I was very positive through that whole process.
I think he had a better time than I did. I think that's just the bottom line.
Yeah.
And that's hard to realize, I think.
Well, it's definitely the reality of the situation.
It is.
You definitely struggled more than I did.
Okay, well, let's talk about that.
So what did it take to get us to Florida?
So we had moved back from Oregon, the wilderness, and we actually decided we were going to go to one semester of school.
Mm-hmm.
So it was around August. We got back. Oh, we have some pictures. We did a fake bridal shoot right before we left from Oregon.
Oh, yeah. That was fun.
And I guess it was just me. I was just the one getting pictures. I was a model for Michael's sister Melanie's photography business. And I can put in some of those pictures. Those are fun.
Mm-hmm.
That was when I had a 6-month-old. So he was 6 months old. That's right before we came back to Utah. So James was 6 months old.
There's not much of interest during that fall semester. We came back to Utah.
For me, it was a big deal. I got to go to school again for 1 semester, and I took 1 class.
And that fall
Just one.
semester, we were living in the fifth wheel trailer in your parents' driveway.
Yep.
That whole
That's what we did.
semester.
Didn't use the bathroom in it. Had to run inside the house in
And
cold
we had a little
weather
crib in
to
there
go
for
to the
James.
bathroom. Yep.
And James was living. Oh, and I started selling Cutco in Utah there in
Yep,
Mount Pleasant, and
That's right.
I did really well actually.
Yeah, you did pretty good. Yeah, and we were also living still off of FAFSA, or financial aid or grants from Snow College. So all I took was photography, and Ryan and
You took photography classes at school.
photography classes at school, and Ryan, my brother, would babysit James during the day when I was at photography, because Michael was going to a lot more classes than I was, right?
I was taking full-time classes.
And also my friend Lauren, my best friend Lauren, would also watch James while I was in class. But I learned so much from that photography class. I use it all the time. All of the information I learned from that class, and I got to skip a class
That was when we started photography.
because right before that we had started photography.
we got a
and-
camera.
Yep.
We borrowed it from my sister,
Yep.
and we started taking pictures and practicing and playing around and learning.
Yes.
That's right. I forgot that was when we started.
Yeah,
that.
and it was very scary and very out of my comfort zone to ask anybody if I could take a picture of them, or even to do what a photographer does, where they're not looking at themselves and thinking, do I look silly right now? Photographers can't really do that. If they're a good photographer, they're not going to worry if they're laying in the middle of the road sideways doing some weird angle, or like leaning up against something, or I don't know, or making a funny face while they're taking a picture. Like, I had to learn a lot of lessons from taking photography.
Yeah, and you did a good job.
Yeah, and
Especially
I
with your
learned a lot.
class. That class
Oh,
helped you get outside
I have
your
a lot
comfort
of photography pictures from that class. While we're talking about this, I'll just have them all showing on the video. So tune into Beach Theory on YouTube if you want to see the actual pictures of the pictures that I took of that class.
zone
And
of this time period.
I have to say, I was one of the very top students in the class.
I was the best in my
I was not the
whole
best,
class.
but I was one of the top students in my
Well,
class.
you were amazing.
I was really good at photography.
You're an artist. You got a natural eye for
It was
that.
really fun.
Yeah.
And my teacher loved what I would come up with. And it was weird, but I loved the setup of the class. All they did was send out, everybody would agree on one word, like shiny. And then everybody would set out, and she said, you have to take at least, I think she
1,000
said
pictures.
1,000 pictures every assignment. And I was like, yeah, that's not going to happen. But I did take plenty of pictures, like maybe 100. And then I would pick out of one of those. And then the next day, the whole class would rip it to shreds or say, wow, that's really good. And I learned so much from that.
You learned how to take criticism.
I learned how to take criticism, and I learned
and how to say,
to,
well, sorry, I don't appreciate your criticism because I like the photo anyway.
or I learned how to analyze something and go, I don't think that's good enough, and be okay if I wouldn't be crushed if somebody was like, actually during that class, I was crushed, but I learned how to not be crushed if people were like, that looks dumb because of this. And I was like,
I just remember some of the words. Lugubrious.
lugubrious. What kind of a word is that? I've never even heard that word ever since that class.
There were some fun ones, and I remember helping you with those projects.
Chaos, shiny.
And your family got to help out with a lot of those photos.
I think one of them was like, not magic, but perspective, I think. And then like I got to make like forced perspective, where all of like James and Michael were like sitting in a wagon riding down a hill, but we just made it look like they were tiny in a big giant wagon. I have those pictures. I'm going to put them on the podcast.
Those are fun. That was good times.
On the YouTube video of this.
And when I was going to Snow College, I was taking just like all these business classes, entrepreneurial.
That's right. See, all
like
these things have
classes,
led us to where we are today. I
sales
even
classes.
forget that we've done these things.
I took a lot like business laws, and but I also took a lot of like yoga, swimming, circuit training.
Oh, I took archery one. That was the year before, but I really loved it.
Yeah, I only took the classes that that interested me.
Yeah.
Because I had no interest in a degree, because I wasn't planning on getting a fancy job. I was planning on just being an entrepreneur, working for myself,
Yep.
doing my own thing.
He had no drive to work for someone else ever,
But
including me.
But I had a lot of drive to do my own business and,
Yes.
and do my own thing.
He always planned.
my own
He's always
way.
planned to have a lot of real estate. He's loved the idea of buying real estate.
I read real estate
and-
investing books when I was a teenager.
Yep.
That's no
And-
exaggeration. That's no joke.
Yeah.
I did.
Cody
Gee,
just
thanks,
said,
Cody.
nerd.
Well, hey, this nerd is. You know what I'm about to say, right?
He's showing you. Is that what you're saying?
Carry on.
The geeks will inherit the earth. That's a famous line from
Inherit the earth.
I Fight Dragons.
That's a good
I
band.
love that song.
So you did a lot of things that were going to prepare you for all these things that we were doing later, and we didn't really know we would.
Yeah, and now we
be successful
own
at
2
them.
properties, and
And
we
we're
got a
trying to get
rental
more.
property. So it's happening.
Yes, it's
We're living
working.
it. We're living
It's
our
working.
dream. But from humble beginnings,
That's
because here we are in college with no money, living in a
Yes.
5th wheel trailer.
And it wasn't so miserable, except for winter was coming, and
Winter is coming.
winter was coming, and by that point, James was
It's 9 months.
9 months. He's getting older,
older.
almost probably about walking, crawling. He was crawling right then, and he was almost about to walk. I felt like he got set back a little bit because
From
of
the
us being in the wilderness in the summer, not getting belly time and
Yeah.
practice and stuff. So we were like, okay, school's almost up. We don't want to. I don't think we were gonna get FAFSA again.
Yeah.
We were like, well, if it's not free, we're not doing it. We're not going into debt for not knowing what classes we want or what
What
we're
was
going
our
to go
motivation
into.
to move to Florida? Because we moved in December,
You-
right before Christmas.
Yes, you
at
were
the end
like,
of the
I
fall.
really hate winter. Number one,
Okay.
you were like, I
And
hate snow.
I remember I wanted to go back to Florida because I hadn't been there
He
since
still
my
hadn't
mission.
been back there. The last time he had been there was before his mission, and he totally expected to go straight back there after his mission, and instead he went to Oregon.
Like I left all my friends as a teenager.
all the people he knew,
to go on
everybody.
the mission for the church, and it'd been 3 years. I'm married with a kid, and I still haven't even seen all my buddies from
Yep.
from when I was a teenager. I'm like, I miss
He was
everybody.
he was just dying to kind of not get back to the life he had
Just
before,
get closure, really.
but closure from leaving his life that he knew and
Like I left the door
expecting
open.
to get back
Yeah.
and then not ever going back. Like he
Yeah.
was like, I want to go back to Florida.
Right.
I really want, and I want you to see
And
it
I
too.
want you to see it, and I want you to experience it because
Yep.
you've never been there.
I had never been there. I was terrified to travel. Our experience with Denver in a few podcasts ago was
So
a good
Denver was
example of how terrified.
terrible. Oregon was hard,
Yes.
and so you're like,
leaving the state just
man,
in general, leaving
is
Utah
terrible.
was so hard
I don't
for
want to
me.
do this anymore.
I've gotten so much more comfortable with traveling. You have no idea. We're
so
traveling right
glad.
now, and I feel comfortable.
I'm
That's
so
saying
glad.
something. That's amazing.
That
I have
makes me
come
so
a long
happy.
way.
Yes, you have. You've grown up a lot.
Ah, yes, I have.
So we had to sell. Like, okay, so we're
No,
gonna
wait,
move
we
to
didn't sell all of our stuff yet. We got a storage unit
for what? Why did we get a storage unit
for all of our belongings because we were planning on being there for 4 months.
in Florida?
Yes.
Oh, I don't remember that.
You're like, I just want to.
I was gonna go for taxes and help my dad make a lot of money, right? Is that the
Yes.
plan?
And I think so. And you were just like, okay, we're just going to go there for 4 months because I really want to like see everybody. And I want to, we can just live with my parents because
They have space.
they have space and we don't have money and we want to save money. So we were like, okay, well, let's do that. So his mom's like, okay, $50 a month. And we're like, sweet, let's do it.
So that's what we were paying, $50 to stay in the back bedroom.
Yep.
Kind of a mother-in-law apartment almost.
No, a bedroom
A bedroom.
in the garage,
That's true.
a cement floor.
I
carpet over it.
embellished it to make it sound better than
Yes,
it
he
really
did. Yep.
was.
It was a big room though.
It was a big room.
But
I was gonna work and we were gonna save, and it was gonna be a fun.
It's
experience.
always we're always like, oh, this is gonna be great. We're gonna work and we're gonna save and we're gonna do this and we're gonna do that. Also, we weren't in the saving mindset because we were so far behind on the things that we needed or wanted. Anytime we got money, we just spent it on what we needed because we needed it, like
Right.
phones or underwear. You know, like it wasn't like crazy extravagant things. It was just things that you need to live. And so we were just far behind, and the amount of money we were making at that time did not cover it. So
So we got a storage unit because we were only gonna be temporarily in Florida.
Yes.
And then we
for
changed
4
our
months.
mind. Why did we change our mind?
Because you didn't want to leave Florida. When that 4 months was up, I was pregnant with Corbin.
No.
Yes.
No, there's no way. No, there's no way. Because
Yes.
if we went there in December, Corbin was born the next year after. You're right.
I was right. Like
so
usual.
wait, did we fly back to Utah and then?
Yes.
Yeah.
He's
I forgot
finally
that.
remembering.
Oh my gosh.
He's finally remembering. So this is how it happened.
This is what happens. It's 10 years ago.
We
Lots
leave
happened.
in November or December.
It was right before Christmas, right before the first
December.
snowfall.
That's right.
We drove
left in
straight
December.
south. I remember
We
drove,
barely outran the storm.
the storm
it,
was like
followed
chasing us as we were
We're
like,
go,
south,
go,
south. And we went down to El Paso where it was nice and warm, and then drove through Texas
Yep.
and I-10 all the way over to
Yep.
Orlando.
So we get to Florida. We get there one day early. One day. And Michael's mom she's like, oh yeah, we have a room for you. It's going to be all set up. We get there and it's basically the storage room of the whole house.
Yep.
And it hadn't been cleaned out.
Right.
And I was expecting, because we had at least paid a little bit of money, that it would be at least ready for us to move in. So we get there.
$50 isn't hardly a thing.
It wasn't, but for us at the time, that was a lot of money.
Yeah, that's true. We
And-
can't expect much for $50.
But for us, we did expect a lot. We were moochers.
We cleaned that room out. We got it all organized.
Well, listen, that was what started it off on a bad foot for me, because
Right.
I was like, are you serious? Like, there's this giant marble slab I have to move. There's all these things. Like, I was just so shocked that your mom wasn't like my mom. That's all. I was just like, okay, I was expecting to have this place ready at least. We've got a baby. Like, we need a place to be. And the one place that was supposed to be ready just wasn't ready. And I was so off put by that.
You're expecting the royal treatment?
Not the royal treatment. I was expecting to get what we were told we would get.
Yeah.
That's not the royal treatment. That's just, getting what we paid for, I guess. And so
We got what we paid for.
Oh my goodness, work. We got work. That's what we paid to work. Anyways, so we cleaned out the room. We made it beautiful. It was not beautiful when we got there. We tried really hard. I tried really hard to
You
make
did a
it
great job too.
homey and beautiful, and that was all we had. So we tried really hard to make it nice.
And I think I did work at the office for my dad a
You
lot.
did.
My dad's an accountant. I worked for him in Orlando and
And we were there
spent
for
the
4 months.
tax season there.
And then you were like, man, 4 months just isn't long enough. I could get my bees.
Oh yeah.
And we could be here, and I could make a lot of money with beekeeping.
Because I had done
'Cause-
beekeeping in Utah before we got married and
Yeah.
while we were married, and I was always disappointed that they didn't give us as much honey.
As Florida.
When I lived in Florida before my mission, I had like 10 beehives, and I got so much honey. It was like the most amazing harvest.
Yep.
I would harvest multiple times a year, and so I kind of had this dream of Florida being the paradise for beekeeping.
Yep.
And so I told Rebecca, hey, look, it's springtime. Let's get some beehives. I think we can have a really good year.
And I was like, you only said 4 months. I thought we were going to go home now. I could handle 4 months. Like, at least we had a room. We weren't in the wilderness, like we had running water and electricity. So that was good. But I was like, you said 4 months. And you're like, but come on, like this is my dream. And it was the same kind of scenario where I was like, okay, I just want to please you, husband, and I just want you to be happy, and so I'll do it. So we go home. We fly home, actually. The only time James has ever been on a plane, actually.
That's right. We flew back to
And-
Utah.
And we go to our storage unit we had tons of food storage. The storage unit owner bought all of our food storage from us,
Because we were trying to sell everything.
and we sold.
Because we want to keep paying for the storage unit. We weren't even living there.
Yep. And we didn't know how long we were going to be in Florida. We didn't know if it was going to be permanent. We didn't know anything. So we were like, well, let's sell as much stuff as we can. And we don't want to keep it because we're just paying money for it. That's going down the drain. So we're
Yeah.
like, and plus we can make some money from the yard sale. So we literally emptied our storage unit, threw it on the lawn at my parents' house, everything before sorting it out, and put a tarp over the top of it so that we could sell it the next day.
I think it was snowing or raining or something.
It was raining. So we took the tarp off the next day, and the giant cake, the 3-tier cake that I had made for our wedding, got pulled from the tarp and smashed to the ground.
I remember that. I remember thinking,
And
Becca.
a beautiful crystal bowl that I got for my wedding smashed to the ground and broke, got thrown in the trash. The cake survived. It got damaged, but it survived.
I remember saying we should sell the cake, and he was like, "No, I don't want to sell the cake.
That's like, I
It's
made
got
that.
sentimental value." And I said,
Yeah.
"Okay, well then don't sell it for cheap. Think about this. What if you sold it for $1,000?
I still have that, and I'm glad I haven't sold it.
I'm glad you did
Yeah.
too. But I remember telling you,
Oh my
just put the
goodness.
price so high that you can't refuse if
Yeah.
someone's willing to pay it. And maybe no one will buy it, but at least that way there's always the
Yeah.
chance."
It hurts my heart even thinking about this, and I'm not kidding. Like, we up to that point had nothing except the few nice things that we did have were from our wedding registry that we got from our wedding. We got lots of really nice cookie sheets. We got really nice bowls. We went to Bed Bath & Beyond and made it our gift registry and got a lot of the things that were on that registry. People they bought for us and gave to us. And during that yard sale, I watched people come in and say, "I want this." And I would say, I would give a high price because we paid a lot for it, or the people that bought it for us paid a lot
It
for
was
it.
high
It was
quality.
expensive. It was the nice stuff that I never had in my life.
Mm-hmm.
Like my mom, like the kind of stuff that my mom would cherish and keep in a nice like glass cupboard to show off. That
Yeah.
type of stuff. And I would just watch all of that stuff one by one get sold off to people who wanted a better deal on it, that would say, "Oh, it's not worth that." And I would say, "Yes, it is." And they were like, "Well, I'm not going to buy it." And then I was like, "I have to sell this stuff. We can't keep it at my parents' house. We can't keep it in the storage unit. I'm not going to do that." So we just sold all of these things that were very precious to me one by one. And it made me so sad. Like, it was a huge setback for us. We made like $1,000.
Yeah, it wasn't
Which wasn't much. It did not last us very long at all. It probably was I think that's what got us back to Florida.
But at least we didn't have to pay for the storage unit anymore.
That was hard.
Yeah,
That was really difficult. So then we went back to Florida, and not only did I not have all these nice things that I had previously, but we were under the thumb of Michael's mom and dad because we were living with them. And previous experience with Michael and his parents was a child living in their house. So even though we were married and we had a son and I was pregnant, we had what felt to me like the rights of a teenager.
Yeah. I don't think you were pregnant when we went back to Utah and sold
We were.
everything.
Oh, no, we were.
Not yet.
Right off the plane, I was pregnant.
It must have been like right after we got back is when you got pregnant.
Oh, something like that. It was really close to that.
Yeah. I remember thinking, like, it's time. Even though we were in a like terrible situation financially.
Oh, that was one thing that I was like, I'm not going to mess this up. Every single time it feels like it's time to get pregnant, or like we would pray about it a lot and be like, okay, is it time? Heavenly Father, do you want us to have another kid? Is it the right timing? And it always felt like the right timing when we got pregnant, and then we would get pregnant right away. And that was another one of those times, which
I remember thinking, we're not in the great situation. Why are we getting pregnant? This is not
we
very...
didn't think like that very much back then.
I know, we didn't.
We didn't think, oh, we're not prepared. We just thought, this is what's right. This is what we need to do, whether we're ready
need
or
another
not.
Kid.
Heavenly Father will provide a way.
Yeah.
That's how we looked at it.
Right. And I'm glad we didn't wait.
Oh, I'm so glad
Corbin's
we didn't
such a
wait. It's
sweetheart.
absolutely right. Like, I wouldn't change timing. I wouldn't change the kid. Like, the kids, I wouldn't change anything about how we have our family.
Yeah.
Like, jobs can change.
Yeah.
Money can change. Houses can change. Our comfort, I don't know. Everything can change, but at least we have our family.
Yep.
And I'm just glad that that's
Family's
always been
eternal.
top priority.
All the other things are just temporal and
Yep.
temporary.
Yep.
And we figured that was the most important. That's why we get married, to have a family.
That's why.
That's what it's
That's
all
the
about.
reason.
Right.
Yep. So while we were in Florida, it just
So-
became more uncomfortable for me because I got pregnant. And then at that same time, James was just starting to like walk, and he was almost in his terrible twos, getting into everything in their house.
Right.
So, and it was my first kid. So I was getting lots of instruction on how to be a better mom from Michael's mom and from Michael and from Michael's family. And I was just like, hey, this is my first kid. Leave me be. I want to know. I want to figure this out myself. And at least you got to figure it out yourself. So let me do that myself. Like, I was just so, I did not like getting advice from people. Some of it was helpful, I'm not going to lie. And other parts of it just made me feel like I was, like they were saying I was a bad mom. And I didn't like that.
Yeah.
So that happened a lot. And we were in their space a lot because we only had a bedroom. We didn't have a kitchen or a bathroom attached to like where we were at,
Right.
or a separate entrance or anything. So it was kind of like very encroaching in their space.
Yeah.
And just the nature of how it was set up, it was frustrating to us too, because we wanted our own space, but we were mooching and we weren't paying for the price for our own space, and we didn't have the money for our own space. So it was just so uncomfortable.
Yeah. It was a difficult time. And
Michael was comfortable, by the way. He was not unhappy.
That was my home.
It was
my home. It was
his-
my family.
Yeah, it was his space that he was raised in. He knew how to handle his family. He knew what, that was another thing. They communicated very differently than
Yeah.
my family did. And
That's for sure.
and he knew how to read between the lines. They do a lot of reading between the lines or
A lot of
implying
body
things.
language.
A lot of body language. And my family just like says what they want to say and gets it out there, and they're super bold. And even if it hurts feelings, and then later they're like, I'm sorry, I didn't mean that. You know, like,
Yeah, my family's not like that at
no,
all.
they're so that was just culture shock almost.
Yeah.
And then, so all this time I'm like, wait, did they mean this or did they mean this? They said this, but did they actually mean that? And he's like, no, they did not mean that. They meant this. And I'm like, oh, so it was almost like learning a new language for
Yeah.
me.
Being in a foreign country, learning a new language. You're like a foreign exchange student
I really was.
married with a kid.
Yeah. With not very many rights as a parent.
And not
you know,
enough money to
do anything about
to do
it.
anything about it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
to change the situation. So what do you think about that? What do you remember about my feelings?
I was
from
spending a
that
lot
time?
working. I was either working with my dad at the office.
Mhm.
I think right after tax season, I got jumped back into Cutco, and
Mhm.
I, checked into the Cutco office there in Orlando and became one of their top selling Cutco reps.
Which, if he was single, he would have been making bank.
Yeah.
But because he had to support a family, and we had to pay bills for getting like food
Yeah.
and and rent and our car and gas money and also healthcare for baby.
Yeah,
what
I
else?
think if
There
I'd have been
was- we had-
single, it
we
would
had
have
a
been
lot
a
of
different
bills.
story. But
Yeah.
I worked my butt off, and I remember one time because I
It
sold
just
Cutco.
wasn't enough for a family. That's all.
I sold Cutco for probably 8 months that whole summer, and I actually became like a assistant manager in the office.
Yeah.
And I would conduct interviews for people that wanted to sell Cutco, and I
Yeah.
would conduct trainings.
Which
and
you were more fitting for that than
I
for
feel
actually
a lot
selling.
better than that. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I didn't get paid a lot for that.
Mm-mm.
I don't remember if I got paid anything for I don't even remember a lot about
I have
the
no idea.
management.
I feel like I can't remember that part.
But this was another one of those situations where I'd go out with another Cutco sales rep and I'd watch how he does it, and he's so good.
Yep.
It's like this production, and it's just he's great at acting. He laughs at all the right things and says all the right jokes, and just like sells $2,000 worth of Cutco, and that's one appointment. And to me, it was like if I sold $100 worth of Cutco, that was a good appointment.
Yep.
If I sold $1,000 in a day and I did like 8 appointments, like that was a good day
Yeah.
for me. And I did that a couple times.
Yeah.
But it was
during
really
that
hard.
time, he was working 70 hours a week.
I was working a ton.
And for some people, maybe that's not a lot. Maybe that's normal. But for me and him, that was so much, too much.
Yeah.
And it got to a point where he was tired and he was driving and he got in a car accident.
So I was driving to an appointment.
He was so
And
tired.
I was in the Toyota Corolla. And I remember coming along the road, and I was driving probably 60 miles an hour. It was a highway road.
Yep.
And there was a stoplight ahead. And I could have swore that I had a green light.
This is how tired he was.
But I don't think I was paying very close attention. And even now, sometimes I'll be driving and it's just like, oh, there's a stoplight, but I just drive because I'm not paying close enough attention.
Whoa, that's bad.
And I wasn't on my phone. I was looking at the road and I was driving the car and I was just being careful. But I think I was just kind of mentally I was checked out and I was thinking about the next appointment and I was thinking about work and I was tired and I just didn't see the red light.
Yep.
And a garbage truck
pulled through the intersection.
Was turning in front of me and I saw it and I hit the brake and I skidded and slammed right into his tire. It
totaled the car
and did not
made
scratch.
A scratch or no scratch.
There was not a scratch.
Not a scratch on the dump truck.
I hit it right in the front tire.
Yep.
But my car was totaled.
Yep.
And that was my favorite car.
It was. But now the Prius is even better.
Yeah, it is. But that was really hard and I had like 3 more appointments scheduled for that day.
Yep.
So I was fine. I was okay.
He had a little bit of his chest hurt.
I had some pain in my lungs.
Because of the CO2 in the airbag that he breathed in. It actually hurt his chest.
I remember when I smashed into the truck, someone came and was like, hey, are you okay? You okay? You know, they came running to the car. And
first thing he said.
I hit my face so hard on the airbag. And it felt like you got punched in the face. Like
in all places.
Boom, yeah. And so
that scared me.
I couldn't see. And so I couldn't see my face and I was like, do I look okay? Is my face okay?
That's the first thing he said. Is my face okay? This is going to be my moneymaker in the future. I really needed to be okay.
No, I was like, it just felt flattened, you know? And I had no idea if like everything was broken or bloody. Like I had no idea. It just felt smashed.
So that was a changing point for me because he went home, he grabbed his dad's car, he finished the appointments.
Yep. I went to my appointments the rest of the
dedication.
day and I sold $1,000
and I
that
think
day.
I think the person who was the manager above you like told the whole everybody about how dedicated you were to get to your appointments and
right.
And so what we were doing wasn't working. Again, like I was very unhappy at home because I was basically starting to seclude myself in the house. If I didn't want unwanted advice or if I didn't want to have to read between the lines of communication, I just would seclude myself. And I also didn't want it happen multiple times a day where James would get into cupboards or he'd make a mess or we weren't very responsible and we wouldn't clean up after him. I mean, honestly, we wouldn't.
Get in trouble.
And I would get in trouble. And so I was just so tired of that I was just hiding in my room all day. And Michael would come home and he would communicate with his mom. And then Michael would come and communicate with me. And then I would send him back to talk to his mom if I had a problem. It was just not good. And he wasn't making the money that was needed. Literally, like we were not making enough money. So his family... At that time, they were still kind of snowbirds. They would go up to Oregon for the summer and then stay in Florida for the winter. And winter was over and they wanted to go up to Oregon. So the whole family left. And we had kind of been sharing food up until that point. And it was good and bad. In that I would make different food that they weren't used to that was unhealthy. And they did not like that. But I was using their budget to pay for it because... we didn't have the money for food, so I was like, I'll be your cook. And then they didn't really end up liking it.
I forgot about that, yeah.
And that was a hard subject for them. And they wouldn't really tell me, hey, I don't like this food. They would grumble about it, and then Michael would find out about it somehow, and then he would come and communicate with me. So it was just like, I don't know how to please anybody, and I'm trying really hard. So then they left for the summer, and we were there, and I was pregnant with Corbin by this time, like pretty pregnant. And Michael was working as hard as he could with Cutco. And that time became so difficult for me that I was like, if we don't change something, I can't live here. I can't even be married anymore. Like that was probably... the closest I feel like we've come to divorce.
Yeah.
Like, and I think a big part of that was I would communicate to him, hey, I'm really bothered by this one thing, or hey, I can't stand this. And there was no better option. And he would say, hey, what do you want me to do? Tell me what to do. And then I would say, I don't know what to do. We just can't do this.
Yeah.
And so it would just frustrate him. And so we weren't getting anywhere with our communicating, and nothing was changing. And I was like, okay, I've had it. So I stayed up one night. I was pregnant. We weren't making enough money. We had just had to go to our church to get some food, to be helped from our church. And that food wasn't going to last forever. And I really did not want to have to go ask for more. I was just like, it's not that I was too prideful. It was just that I knew that we were in this cycle that we weren't getting out of.
Yeah.
And to rely on the church always, that's not an end goal. Like, that's not a good solution. That was a very temporary fix. And so we had the food we needed for a little while, and then his family left, and then we weren't eating their food anymore. They didn't have more food in the house, and I was looking in the fridge. There was almost all of the food from the church was gone, and I was just like, I'm pregnant. We're not making enough money. Michael's working 70 hours a week. I'm home alone with a 2-year-old, and I'm
Not
pregnant.
a 2-year-old.
A 1.5-year-old.
Yeah.
And I'm pregnant. And I was just like, okay, it's time to change something.
So that's the end of today's episode.
Okay.
Next week, it's going to be crazy.
Okay.
Do you know what happens next week, right?
Everything changes.
Well, that's right. So I guess you guys will have to make sure to tune in next week to find out what happens.
And I'm going to tell in the next episode what I said in the letter to Michael.
Exciting.
And I'm telling you, it was harsh.
Yeah,
it was hard.
It was hard.
I'm right here and I'm like, what is it?
Really? Really? Oh, good. We got a sufficient suspense.
Okay, to be continued. Hey, thank you guys so much for tuning in. These episodes
we're opening our hearts to you. I hope you know.
These are stories we've never told.
I don't even talk to my mom about this stuff. And she's the only other person than Michael that I'm the closest to.
So I hope that you guys learned something, or maybe get some benefit, or at least feel like, hey, I'm going through a similar problem. I can do it too, because we can do it. But let us know if you have any questions in the comments or thoughts.
Tip. Let me just say a huge tip.
Yeah.
We were trying to communicate. We were trying so hard, and it just was not working at that point, because he had a different idea of what was working, and I was like, no, this isn't working.
Right.
So, huge tip, to write out a letter of every single thing that you have to get out, that you have tried to, you've tried to get through to somebody, and it's just not working, because then you'll be able to at least get all the relief, get it off your chest, and then you can go through it one thing at a time and address something.
I remember that, yeah.
So that's what I end up doing, and I'll tell you what I wrote in it.
So stay tuned next week. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube to Beach Theory for daily content there, and also follow us on all the podcast sites, Apple Podcasts,
and I'm
Spotify,
telling you,
Anchor.
You're not going to want to miss next week's, because it is, what I wrote in that letter is probably the harshest, most intense I've ever talked to Michael.
It's also the beginning. It's a new beginning, and it leads to better things.
Oh,
so.
I'm getting chills. I'm getting goosebumps on my head. I don't know why. But seriously, it's like, probably because I almost feel like crying a little bit, because of
there might be crying in the next episode.
Already tearing up.
Okay, we'll see you
right.
guys.
See you later.
Bye.
Bye.